Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Mills, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the discussion on trust streaming and distributions, critical information for the current year and for next year. Just a housekeeping matter. As many of you will be aware, today's presentation is being streamed to over 100 people on the net. As a courtesy to each other and to people on the net, if you could make sure that your phones are turned off or to silent, please. I will ask you at the end to complete evaluation forms, but in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Danielle Morgan, the Tax Institute representative at the front desk. Our speakers tonight are Ken Schurgott and Scott McGill. And before introducing them, it's probably worth just very quickly traversing the fact that despite some of the confusion that's arisen over the last couple of years in relation to various decisions and the decision impact statement of the Tax Office in relation to Bamford and then following that Colonial, the last few months have been a considerably tight time frame for the Treasury paper to be released following the Minister's announcement on the 4th of March. Draft legislation to be circulated 6 weeks after that, and comments provided, and a further 6 weeks after that on the 2nd of June, legislation being introduced into Parliament. It is expected that that legislation will pass prior to 30 June, and while there have been some people casting doubt on whether or not that could occur in the parliamentary time frame, you may just want to observe the number of bills that have in fact been passed by Parliament just over the last few days. It should be remembered also that this has been announced to be an interim measure, and early in the new financial year there will be consultation on a rewriting of Division 6 generally. So to our speakers. Ken Schurgott is Tax and Commercial Law Partner at the Sydney office of SBN Lawyers and has extensive experience in matters relating to a number of various aspects of trust, but is well known in the areas relating to trust and estate law. Ken is the National Counsellor of the Tax Institute and a member of the New South Wales Divisional Council and the Education Committee. He's also a member of the advisory panel to the Board of Taxation and has recently been a member of the Working Group on Managed Investment Trusts. Ken's been heavily engaged in the consultations around this particular measure, and I'd like to thank Ken for the time that he's put into getting the paper together in the last couple of weeks since the legislation has been released. Our second speaker, Scott, is a partner at Moore Stephens in Sydney, and he heads the property specialisation practice of the Sydney office, dealing with all aspects of taxation for builders, developers and investors. Scott has presented a number of papers on the property industry and is closely involved with industry bodies and lobbying with at the ATO. The run of this evening will start with Ken giving a presentation of how the rules work generally, and Scott will then focus in particular on examples. And to that end, Scott's relied heavily on the examples contained in the explanatory memorandum, which, as you'll observe as time goes through, require some additional explanation. But to that end, for those who are watching in, you may want to have your explanatory memorandum handy, especially from page 62. Firstly, if you could please join me in welcoming Ken.
Thank you, Andrew. In a sense, I've lived with this stuff for probably about 4.5 years, and I say that because I have been Tax Institute's representative, as Andrew has as well, on the trust subgroup of the National Tax Liaison Group, and I think we've heard every possible interpretation of every possible trust measure that the Tax Office has come up with. These most recent amendments, which are contained in the Measures number 5 bill, TLAB number 5 bill, which is presently before Parliament, as Andrew said, come from a consideration of whether or not you can stream franking credits or capital gains from a trust to a beneficiary. And that's the only thing that I'm really going to talk about tonight. There are other things, in particular one other thing in that bill which I won't talk about, and that is a new proposed section 100AA, which deals with a particular scheme to recharacterise trust income as capital and distribute a very small amount of capital to a exempt beneficiary. That in itself deserves probably about 10 to 15 minutes of consideration, but I just don't have time. I'm sticking to my knitting, as it were.